This is an exclusive presentation from Federated Media. Unholstered.
Welcome back. Here we go. This is Unholstered. My name is Kayla Blakesley, and I am just one of your hosts here on Unholstered.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Sophia Rosales-Catina. I'm a captain with the Fort Wayne Police Department, and welcome to the show.
If for some reason this is your first time tuning into Unholstered, this show is all about telling and sharing the stories that don't often get told when it comes to law enforcement, not only here locally, but across the region, across the state, across the country. We are all about sharing and telling those stories. And Sophia, this has been a topic of conversation a lot of listeners have wanted us to get to. I'm dying to get to this conversation. It's all about squatters and trying to evict squatters. I can't wait to get into whether or not we have this happening here in Fort Wayne. I feel like we've been hearing about these stories nationwide now for quite some time. So who did you bring in?
I brought in someone who is an expert on the subject because they deal with this. So just for clarification, we're going to talk about squatters and evictions today. And that is the eviction part is solely handled by the Allen County Police Department. We cannot evict anyone. The eviction process has to go through the county department. And so I brought someone on who's expert. Fun fact, this is the first county officer we've had on this program, so I'm excited.
Oh, after over 2 years, too.
Yes,
Shame on us. We should have brought someone in sooner.
I know. So I'll let him introduce himself now.
My name is Sergeant Brian Sandberg. I work in the Civil Division of the Allen County Police Department.
How long have you been with the Allen County Police Department?
Since 2000 is when I started at the jail, and then as a sworn officer, 2001.
So obviously, with you being here and with what Sophia just said about evictions being the role of the county, obviously this is happening in Allen County.
Technically, we do not have a whole lot of squatters in Allen County.
Good answer. Glad to hear it.
Well, let me preface this by saying that in the state of Indiana, there is no such thing as a squatter. There is no squatter rights. The state legislation has not defined anything that has to do with squatting within these statutes. Technically, they're either a tenant or they're trespassing on the property. So we do not run into what people would consider to be squatters. I think the biggest thing is with as much as it's blown up through social media and everything else, people use that word for a myriad of definitions. Mm-hmm. So when we get calls about squatters, technically they're really not. They may be one of two things. It's either usually the landlord doesn't know them because the person that they're renting to has brought somebody else in. And then when that person leaves, the person that they brought in stays, and then the landlord's like, I don't know who's living there. They're just squatting there.
Almost like a sublease, if you will.
Yeah. So it would be like, Sophia, if you rented out a place and say you had a roommate, your roommate left, and you're like, oh, I can't afford the rent without this roommate, so I bring somebody else in, don't notify the landlord, for the lease that I have a new roommate. And then Sophia leaves, that roommate stays, and then the rent's not being paid because that roommate's been paying the rent to Sophia, and Sophia hasn't been paying the rent. She leaves, and then that person stays, and the landlord's like, I don't know who this person is. And
I'm not getting paid rent.
Right, and I'm not getting paid rent, so I'm going to evict this person, but I have no idea who they are. They're just squatting here. Well, technically, they're not. They were a co-resident with the other tenant that already left, so then they would have to go through the eviction process to remove them.
A civil issue.
Correct.
Not criminal. So there's distinctions in that, and that's why they handle that. We do not.
What does that look like? Let's just use our Sophia scenario here. Sophia's out of the picture. Her ex-boyfriend's still living there or what have you, not paying the rent. But the landlord's like, I don't know who this is. Where do things go from there then?
So then what the landlord would do is then they would go down to small claims court and they would file a notice of new claim to start the eviction process. Once they fill that out, basically a notice is created. It comes to the sheriff's department. We then take that notice. We serve the property and the individual there, saying that, hey, you have a hearing for an eviction. Once that service is done and the court has set up a hearing date, then they would have a hearing to decide whether or not the tenant or the landlord, whoever gets the property, if the landlord gets the property, what would happen is they do basically give the tenant 7 days from the date of the judgment. So after the hearing, if the courts decide, hey, we're going to give possession back to the landlord, they'll give the tenant 7 days to vacate on their own. If they don't vacate on their own, then what happens is the landlord goes back down to small claims and they request a writ of assistance. Actually, it's a writ of restitution. And then what happens is that writ of restitution is issued by the courts to the sheriff to assist the landlord in regaining that property. Once we receive that, we get a date set up with the landlord, and then we go out and actually do the physical eviction, remove them from the property.
Which I might add is a very, very dangerous situation for most officers serving those evictions. There have been officers killed trying to evict people from their property. It's just a very emotional time because some people may be tied to this property for a while, especially on the foreclosures end of it. And you guys handle those too.
We handle not only actually landlord-tenant issues, we also handle foreclosures, we also handle tax sales. Any type of judgment that is sent down from the courts, our office does.
Did the courts usually, and I'm talking more of this situation of the tenants/squatters, did the courts usually rule in favor of the landlords in those scenarios? It really
all depends. I mean, for the most part, yes, because there's an actual issue with either a contractual interest in the property where the rent's not being paid or they're violating the lease of some sort. I have seen times where, though, a tenant will ask for a stay because of stuff that's going on, and the courts will find in favor of the tenant.
Who pays the landlord?
It may not be an issue of payment. It may be an issue of you violated the lease somehow.
Gotcha.
I
don't even know who this person is.
Or you had a dog that you weren't supposed to have.
Gotcha.
So it's when we do evictions, it's not just about non-payment. There could be a myriad of things that are going on.
I want to go back to this term tenant as well, at least here in the state of Indiana. I'm putting you on the spot. How is that defined?
To be honest with you, that would be a legal question that you would have to ask either an attorney or a judge. I don't have a legal degree, so I can't tell you exactly how it is defined. Most of the time, what the courts have said is that they have a contractual interest in the property.
Gotcha.
Which is you either have a lease with the landlord or you may have an agreement with whoever's leasing that property to stay.
But some form of contractual agreement. Because
Correct.
I asked that because we hear about these squatters, right, all the time in other states, and they're like, well, I'm having my mail sent here. I've got 2 pieces of mail that show.
Well, and a lot of times what we find out is that somebody has allowed them to stay at that residence that has standing. So it may be I have a lease with you. I bring Sophia in to let her stay with me, and that is enough for that person to say, hey, this is my residence. They have a right to be there, and they're bringing me in, and I'm paying rent to them, or staying here, and they start having their mail sent there. They start, paying for utilities there, helping pay rent.
This is interesting to me. So now a lot of times when we are hearing this term squatter, because again, these stories are making national news headlines, it may not, in fact, really, quote, be a squatter, someone just randomly showing up while you're on vacation and squatting in your house. It could be this kind of complicated. And this is what I'll say is when we look at it, if we'll use the word squatter basically generically. Before we came on air, we were talking. So it would be just like if you had, like in a trailer park, there's a vacant trailer, and you have high school kids that go into that trailer at a party. You show up as law enforcement. They're not supposed to be there. Mm-hmm. They're not renting the place, so you remove them.
it would be just like if somebody came into a property, even if they've been there 2 months, if they just, landlord has no idea it's a vacant thing, they've been fixing it up, no one's living there, and they just move in without anybody knowing, without anybody giving them permission, they're still trespassing. So it doesn't matter if they've been there 2 months. If we find out that 2 months later they're there illegally. We can remove them without a court order.
Oh.
And this is Indiana.
Yeah.
Right.
We're only speaking to Indiana.
Right.
We cannot speak because every state has different laws. And that's why when I was doing research for the program, I did research that Florida bill that just signed into law.
Yes.
Because their laws were different than ours. So they have we have a lot of snowbirds that leave, right, for Indiana, for Florida, or some Arizona or whatever. So they leave their house for 5-6 months. If someone went in there and started occupying that, they're trespassing. They're not a squatter. So we can remove them.
And in Indiana.
You know, they unlawfully entered that house. They have no standing in that house. Where other states like California, New Jersey, New York may have laws that differ. They may have where, you've got to prove that they, for whatever reason, I don't even know California. It seems crazy to me that someone can just go into anyone's house and just start occupying it and renting it. But that's how it goes there. So I did research the HB 621, which is the new Florida law. So property owners can request immediate removal of a squatter. They do use the term squatter if they've unlawfully entered and remain on the property. They have been directed to leave the property by the owner and refuse to do so, and the individual is not a tenant either current or former involved in a legal dispute with the owner.
Interesting. So they interchange the word squatter and tenant.
Yeah.
In that.
Yeah. And that's when officers can remove people legally from that. Penalties, though, these were interesting. So falsifying a statement to obtain property or conveying property rights is a misdemeanor, which we would consider a misdemeanor. First-degree felony is causing $1,000 worth of damages intentionally to the home while trespassing there. $1,000 is nothing. That's like a washer, breaking a washer. First-degree felony for advertising rent or for sale of the residential property if you have no legal authority or ownership of the property.
Okay, so I was going to bring this up too. This actually happened to my mother-in-law. Granted, it was Ohio. She's in real estate. And there was one of her homes that went up for sale. Some squatters essentially moved in because they capitalized on this moment of seeing the for sale sign up in the front yard. It turned into a whole legal dispute. She walked in and they had keys made to the house. They were having their mail sent there. It was a whole legal process for her as well. But I was going to ask you that. Does that happen here where these for sale signs pop up and all of a sudden tenants / squatters are, claiming that as their place of residency?
I can honestly admit that I've only seen it one time, and it was on a foreclosed home.
Gotcha.
Where they had found a vacant foreclosed home that the bank basically was waiting for the sheriff's sale to be done on it. And we had a lady that had moved into it unbeknownst to anybody. So when they sold the house, the new owner came, somebody's living there. Of course, she says, no, I have a rental contract. Well, what happened was somebody had drawn up a rental contract for this lady to rent her this nice home and let her move in. She takes that rental contract down to city utilities and gas company and gets the gas in her name, city utilities in her name. Go to remove her. She says, everything's set up in my name. Here's my rental agreement. I'm renting this property from whatever business. And so luckily when we do a sheriff's sale, the order is already within the sheriff's sale to remove any occupants found occupying the premise. So we had to do is just get the writ and then remove her. So
crazy.
That is wild.
But I can tell you this, that I've been doing this for over 15 years, and that's the one and only time I've ever seen where somebody has occupied a vacant house, but it was because of the fact that somebody else had rented it to her. So technically she believed that she was legally running this residence.
So it wasn't a case really of like
No.
squatting.
And that's why I said we really, in Allen County, we really do not see what the rest of the country would define as a squatter.
Yeah. Do you know if it's happening around the state at all?
That I do not know.
I have not heard.
Yeah. And
I haven't either.
That it happens, and I think that's because we probably have laws that prevent that here. But we do get a lot of, when we do have, this is a city problem, when we have abandoned homes, we do have people that go in and occupy those homes, like homeless people that'll go and start living there, drug users that'll go and start living there and start doing drugs there. But the neighbors do call us. They're already usually condemned homes, abandoned homes, so we can trespass them through city code, neighborhood code, I'm sorry. So neighborhood code will go in and condemn. We can remove people in a condemned home. Because you have to have running water, you have to have electricity in an actual home to actually have it, to be occupying it.
So what I'm hearing is that Indiana was proactive to this and didn't even know they're probably really being proactive to this kind of new squatting trend.
But oddly enough, we were talking before the show too, there is a law on the books that I found, and we talked about this, called adverse possession.
I have no idea what that means.
Yeah, so we talked about it, and it's a law from a long time ago that has just stayed.
It's from a long time ago. So, and it's almost impossible in the state of Indiana to even
have this work for you.
Comply with the law. I mean, there's I think 25. There's a 25-year and a 10-year part of the statute where you have to occupy the property for either 25 years or 10 years. You have to pay the taxes on the property. You have to notify the owner of the property that you're staying there and this is my property. A lot of times it's used for easements.
Okay, gotcha.
A prime example is two lake cottages. My grandfather's walked this path down to the lake for the past 25 years. No one's ever said anything. Hey, we use this as an easement, and then somebody comes in and puts up a fence on it. Mm-hmm. They take them to court and say, no, for the past 50 years, my family's used this as an easement. Everybody knows that we use it as an easement. There's never been any issue with it. And then they take it to court, and then that becomes an easement, or, But yeah, adverse possession is... I wouldn't say it's impossible, but it's very, very
highly
difficult.
Unlikely.
Yeah, with
very,
25
very difficult.
years paying taxes and all that.
Well, in that, you have to knowingly possess the property.
Yeah,
so
and
people have to know you have been there using the property.
And the owner, and the person that actually owns the property, actually you have to give them notice that, hey, this is my property.
And he likened it to like back in the old times when you had like 800 acres and someone set up an acre of property, built a little home, on your 800 acres, and you allowed it, so they were paying taxes or paying whatever and knowingly occupying that with you. Then that becomes their property after a certain period of time.
It makes sense.
Then they have a claim to the property. Yeah. But in the state of Indiana, adverse possession it's like I said, it's very difficult to gain property through that way.
So this could be a really silly question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Something I've learned, doing this show with Sophia for over 2 years now, is they have umpteen different divisions, teams, what have you. Is there a team of you that specializes in these evictions when they do need to happen? Are there certain members that you send out, or is it anybody can do that?
The two officers that you see in the room are our eviction section.
You're the eviction specialist.
We cover evictions and any type of court judgment throughout the state or throughout the county. We're the only two that do it.
Oh, wow.
So they're busy.
I was just going to say, so how busy are you? Yeah.
On an average, we're doing anywhere from 12 to 15 evictions a day.
What?
Monday through Friday.
But think about it. It's for the whole county. It's not just the city limits. The whole county. And Allen County is a rather large county. And you're talking about apartments?
We're talking, apartment buildings. Everything. You're talking mortgage foreclosures, tax sales, landlord-tenant issues, roommate issues. Mom and dads, we've done evictions where we evict grown kids, adult kids out of their parents' house because they won't leave.
So what does a typical day, I know you brought your partner in here, so I'm pointing to both of you, but what does a typical day look like then for you?
We start our day at 8 o'clock. We're usually into the office probably about 7:30, quarter till 8. We go through our morning. We take all of our evictions that we have set for that day. We run basically what we call the defendants, because they're the defendant in the case.
Sure.
Or the tenant. We run them through our system to make sure that we don't have any warrants, we don't have any alerts or anything like that for people that we're going out to do. 9 o'clock, we're usually at our first eviction. We serve one about every 30 minutes. So from 9:30, 10, 10:30, 11, 11:30, we usually do about 5 in the morning. Take lunch. We're back out at 1:30 to our next eviction. We do a 1:30, a 2, 2:30, 3, 3:30, and a 4. So about 11 evictions in the day.
And I can't imagine that you guys are well liked.
To be honest with you, we really
Not by your, I'm sure you're liked by your peers, but I mean,
we really don't have as many issues as people think we would. A lot of these tenants know that it's coming. They've been to court. The judge has explained. Our magistrates in small claims, they all basically do the same litany. They tell them the exact same thing. If they get a judgment against them, they tell them, the exact same thing. You have 7 days to vacate on your own. If you don't vacate on your own, they're going to come back down. They're going to sign the writ book and request a writ. The sheriff's going to come out and remove you. So what we do is we go out, knock on the door. Somebody answers, then we speak with them. If they're the person on the court order, we explain everything to them. We usually give them about 10, 15 minutes to gather up clothes, medication, personal hygiene stuff, whatever they're going to need for the next just couple of days until they can get in contact with their landlord to get an appointment set up to come back and get the rest of their stuff out.
So I'm surprised by the sounds. This all usually, I guess, goes pretty smoothly.
Yeah, I mean, we very rarely have issues. A lot of times, too, people won't be home.
Yeah.
So we'll knock on the door, no one will answer. We'll enter in the residence, clear it, make sure that no one's in the residence, and then the landlord changes locks, and then we post a big orange sticker that says that they've been evicted by order of the court, and that if they're back on the property without the permission of the management or the landlord, they're subject to arrest.
Yeah, gotcha.
So contents of the house, I'm going to get this out here because I know people need to know. Contents of the house, you cannot hold people's property ransom.
Yeah, the contents of the house will stay in place until they can get an appointment set up with the landlord. And then the landlord, typically what we say to the landlord is that within the next 14 days, you need to give them, they have to have access to their property. You need to give them a business day or a reasonable amount of time to gather up their belongings in the house and remove it.
Yeah, you can't hold it ransom for back rent or something like that. You have to allow them to take their property.
And there are some landlords, too, that will move it out and put it in storage and then give them access to that storage unit to come get their stuff. So
just for sake of timing here, really quick, Sophia, so when the Fort Wayne Police Department gets calls about tenants / evictions, anything that deals in that world, do you send them?
We guide them over to the Allen County Police Department to handle all that. We can, there's certain things we can do if someone's trespassing or if there's a domestic involved. It's not like we can't remove people from homes. We can. It's just if we're seeing that it's going more towards the eviction or we just don't know those contractual things, we send them to the county to let them sort it out, thankfully, because it is a civil issue and they handle the civil stuff.
Well, and it sounds like they've obviously got the system down pat. For you guys.
And if it's something, too, that we have a question about, even if it's an eviction that we have, even if we have a court order saying, hey, you're to remove these people, if there's an issue with it, even at the time of the eviction, if there's an issue with it and we don't feel comfortable doing it, we'll normally send it back to the courts and let the court decide. Yeah. They're the legal experts. There's a lot of stuff nuances that I'm not willing to make a decision about or make a judgment call about. So we'll just say, hey, we're done. You go back to the courts and get clarification on this point or something like that. And the courts will have a hearing, and then the courts will notify us of how we should proceed.
It's something Sophia and I say all the time here on the show. Your jobs are to enforce the law, not make the law, or interpret the law. Your job is to enforce the law.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah, and that's what we have courts for. Yep. And like I said, we have a really good working relationship with our magistrates and small claims. So if we are unsure of something, if it's a rent issue or anything else like that, and there's money that's changed hands and we're just not comfortable with doing the eviction at the time because people have paperwork, I'm not going to sit on scene and go, oh, okay, well, let's hear what you have. Okay,
right,
yeah,
right.
You're okay. We'll just send it back to the, if it's something that's egregious that we're like, I don't know, we'll
send it back.
We'll refer it back to the courts and let the courts then give us more guidance from there.
So is it safe to say if you've got any kind of squatting issue, tenant issue, eviction issue, call the Allen County Police Department?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. If it has to do with evictions, and what we're more than likely what we're gonna tell the public is if they call us about an eviction issue, we're gonna have them get in contact with Allen Superior Court, their small claims division, to see exactly what they need to do.
Man, I wish we would have did this episode sooner because so many people have asked me about this, and I didn't know that
it's been in the news.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and I didn't know that Indiana was already like doing it right. Props to Florida trying to play catch up, I guess, being proactive. But it sounds like we already kind of had this one figured out and didn't even know it, or maybe we did know it and had the foresight of this squatting trend. But to both of you out there at the Allen County Police Department, I'm so glad you do what you do. I'm glad that we've got a team out there who's clearly got it figured out how to handle this issue, and hopefully, Sophia, you get less phone calls at the Fort Wayne Police Department.
That's what we pray for every day. Less calls.
If you've missed any previous episodes of Unholstered, you can always download Unholstered anywhere you download a podcast. Your town, your team, your topics. This is Unholstered.
Thanks for listening to Unholstered. Be sure to subscribe on Spotify, Apple, Google Play, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Just search Unholstered.
Podcasts by Federated Media.